The majority of picky eating is surprisingly not because of taste, but because of the fear of texture. For so many adults and children, sensory processing is one of the roughest abilities to regulate, and touch is one of our senses. Working with an occupational or speech therapist is a great way of desensitizing the mouth to allow kind of a variety of textures. And that can be a game changer. But there's one little trick that will dramatically help you avoid picky eating. And this is done from a sensory perspective. The answer might surprise you. Let your children play with their food. Yep, I said it and I will not take it back. Look, I understand you have choking fears with toddlers. So choose safe foods, and that's important. For the most part, hovering our younger kids during their meals and making sure their sweater and hair stays clean is messing them up. Get a bigger bib, have washcloths on hand, but please let them explore through touch. It's human nature that they want to touch something for the first time. Watch how toddlers will touch it and then maybe touch their lip and then maybe their mouth, and they'll lick it, and they get to know it this way. Aside from learning great coordination skills, it becomes less fearful way of exploring. So what if your child is no longer a toddler? Well, we certainly don't want our 10-year-old flinging spaghetti on the wall and planting their face in a bowl of mashed potatoes. If we're speaking of older children or adults, it's not too late. Just let them play within reason. Unless you are the cook of the household, there is a lot of mystery around food. Cooks wash and cut and prepare and know the food they are creating so much more intimately. Everyone else just shows up at the table expecting to embrace the mystery. This is why studies show that kids that help in the kitchen and cook and prepare meals have much fewer issues with picky eating. Let's use the example of broccoli. And by the way, I know I talk about broccoli a lot. It's just that it's one of the vegetables that I know most people can visualize. So broccoli is just something I use. Okay, now it's a pretty funky looking vegetable. And as an adult, we've been seeing it for years on tables. So it's a pretty standard part of our diet. And by our diet, I mean those of us in North America. However, the consistent familiarness of us seeing it on our plates, touching it in grocery stores, and identifying the strong smell while it's cooking is practice. It's in the acceptance is part of our lives, whether we like it or not. But let me help you put this in perspective for a picky eater. It's human nature to fear the unknown. Predictability relaxes everyone, whether it's familiar taste or smells, but perhaps nothing is as important as the way a food really feels. And to a picky eater, we may say, it's just a piece of chicken. What are you afraid of? Let's turn the tables on the parents for a moment. Who decided that chicken meat is not scary and snake meat is? It's what we've been conditioned to accept. We need to conquer the hurdle of fear of the unfamiliar and replace it with open curiosity. So let's imagine you are scooped up from your comfortable food culture and dropped down in a part of the world with very different eating habits. These are the healthiest people you've ever seen. Their skin, their bodies and minds all radiate wellness. Now imagine it's dinner time and the smells coming from the kitchen, they seem strange to you. Not bad, just different. As you sit down, you're dazzled by an assortment of foods that smell amazing and look very pleasing to you, until you notice a bowl of sauteed worms. You freeze with fear. You watch in growing horror as the host gives thanks for this beautiful bounty and announces that we will all feast once the bowl of worms is passed and we take our bites in good health. One by one, the guests take their worms and the host carefully watches to make sure that the ritual is not broken. No one else grimaces. In fact, they seem to enjoy it. They know their vitality is stemmed from this one food. I tell this story because when we say to our kids, it's just broccoli, everyone eats it, and it keeps you healthy. What everyone else is doing is inconsequential at that moment. So understand the fear that they feel. So what would make you try the worm? Politeness? Not wanting to break the ritual is certainly a motive for some. But there are other factors that might make it easier. Knowing that you have to only have a small piece would be helpful. So what if you're offered a really great sauce to dip it in? Well, similar to the roll of ketchup, that might help and will definitely disguise the taste, but more than likely, what you're really worried about is the texture, the way it will feel in your mouth when you crunch down on it. How about if it was mixed in with something? If the ratio of the worm to something you really liked was small, and I think the chances of you giving it a try would be higher. What also makes the desirability higher is being hungry. So please make sure you watch the video on grazing. But the deal in this scenario, if I've been traveling and I've barely been eating all day and building up a huge appetite, dang, right, I'm gonna try that worm. So back to sauces and ratios. If you were given a huge bowl of spaghetti that was mouth-watering and smelling oh so Italian-y wonderful, you were told just a tiny speck of worm was in it. Now are you more willing to try it? I know, some of you may still say no, and I know who you are because I've worked with you. But the point I'm making is that this moment, there are several factors that most are considering. It's the consequence, the belief you can do it, and your motivation. And this brings us to the topic of desensitization. The way to help someone move through texture sensitivities is very, very slowly, with the goal to increase the amount of desired food each time it's served. So let's give an example. And the example is for a child, but this could totally pertain to yourself. So let's say the food is asparagus. The first time you try it, it should be about the size of a pinky nail. So for a child, that's a really, really small piece of asparagus. Now I'm going to assume that in this instruction there's language between you and the individual, because you're doing this with, because it's a much tougher task for a non-speaking individual such as those who are autistic, and I do talk about that in other videos. And I have a video demonstrating how it's done. So, okay. So the explanation is simple. Matter of fact and unwavering. You say, before we eat the meal or snack, we're going to give this a try. And you can eat this tiny piece of asparagus any way you want. You can dip it, you can crush it, I can mush it and put in pasta or rice, any way you want. But we need to take just one bite. So the child might scream, no. I'm not naive, but this is where you need to take the boundary book out. It's not my call how you set your boundaries, but this is a simple request with a reasonable solution. And if your kids like ketchup, you can get them their favorite fries, you can take a tiny piece of the asparagus, you can pulverize it into the ketchup, and then put the ketchup on the fries. And if it's still no, they won't touch it, then no fries. Okay, but what if they do agree? Happy dance, right? Praise most definitely, but don't ask for anything more. Don't ask for them to take another bite. If they ask for it, it's great, but that should be up their idea, and you need to move on until tomorrow. If it was really tough the day before, just continue with that one bite until it's no longer traumatic, and then increase it the size a tad, and eventually it becomes a normal size bite. And what is your goal? This is your personal choice, but I like the 3-bite rule. At every meal, I expected my kids to have at least 3 bites of everything on the table. Here's what I'm not a fan of. Constantly disguising the food that you want them to eat. And don't get me wrong, I still make cauliflower mashed potatoes for my son and for Ron. But if you do nothing but disguise foods, you're not really helping them understand their texture issue. They need to know that they can do it, and you need to stop having to be a sleuth in the kitchen. I have videos for all types of texture lovers, so please see those and you'll get lots more ideas.